Gonna go ahead and get on with, talking about, fans that my grandparents owned. Tell you, some of these vintage fan collectors will over Google, over YouTube, show, fans that are the same, either the same fans or similar fans to, what my grandparents, had. And then nostalgia is triggered. And it really got triggered the other night when I watched a video of a man doing a flick of his Toastmaster box fan, which is one of which my grandparents owned. Sound of the fan and all made me nostalgic, and it being that I don't own any of the fans that my grandparents owned. I don't have them right here in my house in the real world. In fact, I don't even really see hardly any fans like what my grandparents owned in this area anymore. The only place I know where to, actually see one is eBay, YouTube, or, vintage Google sites. That's it. So I'll go ahead and, enlarge, what I find on Google, provide large photos to the best of my ability. Alright, yep. This was definitely, a fan just of what my grandparents owned. A Lakewood box fan with the kind of, triangular shaped blades with the red cabinet, and yep, definitely identical, and was a good fan. And I'm thinking, we moved to Tennessee in like 1983, and guess my grandparents may have possibly bought it in maybe the mid 1970s, and I think they had it till at least the mid to later 80s, so it was at least 10 years old. But what happened is one of their dogs, well, which I think their dog Fanny, and yeah, I think it was Fanny or maybe one of their other dogs in a puppy face, chewed the cord in half. And yeah, one of their dogs chewed the cord in half, and it was a fan. They couldn't use a fan since their dog, chewed the cord in half. And my grandpa bought a replacement plug but didn't get around to any repairs until a few months later, when he just spliced another old cord to it. And I was kind of flustered since, I don't know exactly what flustered me. Maybe the fan, not being in use. Maybe my grandpa not repairing it in time or what. But, I was flustered and turmoiled, and hard to describe what goes on in an autistic mind. But what I did is I ripped the grill apart, ripped a big old, hole in the grill, and, it was just there was a big space in the grill, that was with slats missing, because I kept on, tearing it apart, and had, a big old hole. And plus, what I did was, is I like, you know what, even broke the, pulled the knob off and broke off the stub to the knob. And when my grandpa finally got the fan repaired, it only worked on a low speed. And my regrets to this day for doing damage to such a good fan. Another fan of my grandparents. And this right here has been my favorite box fan of all time. Unique looking oval shaped blades, the rectangles in the rotor, and the sky blue cabinet. That was definitely one of my favorite box fans for sure. And when my Uncle Matthew still lived with my grandparents, their son, my uncle, they had, well, they let Uncle Matthew use this fan in his window for ventilation. And they would also sometimes move it out to their living room and all that. And I guess maybe they had it from the early 80s to late 80s, something like that. But yep, I mean, that's nostalgic for, I mean, watching my Uncle Matthew use it and him using it in his bedroom window, and this be one of their, you know, main fans right there. Oh, okay, one of my ultimate favorites. My grandparents had a Kenmore window fan, just as is, and in their living room window to the side of their house. And to me, I mean, that was a really unique fan. Big old blade brackets and a unique configuration of the rivets to the blade brackets, and plus thick square blades, large pitch, large airflow. And I mean, it was reversible, and my, you know, grandparents always kept it in reverse to, you know, sucking air through the, you know, window. And I was obsessed with this fan too. I mean, it's just, I was obsessed with, I mean, its dynamics and its uniqueness, and watching it spin from the inside, watching it spin from the outside. And I mean, this fan, well, that my grandparents had turned into a major, kind of a pretty extensive, you know, obsession. And that, I kind of look at it today was, well, this fan for some time kind of served as my, you know, Mama and Papa's essential air conditioner. And yes, but for anybody who still owns one of these Kenmore window fans, I mean, if you have it in your window, and if you have a house that ain't too big, I mean, run it and forward so it will blow air out the window, and that will help, you know, suck in air through your other windows, and it would definitely make an excellent, you know, whole house fan. About maybe around 1985, 1986, us and, you know, my grandparents, you know, had a feud, and, you know, we were estranged, you know, all during the feud, but we actually, you know, reconciled in 1989. And in 1989, when we reconciled, I mean, all those other fans were gone, except for they had acquired one of them Galaxy wind machines with 7 blades, and they have, you know, the Toastmaster box fan I'm gonna, you know, depict also, along with some ceiling fans, well, hanging in their high ceiling. Here it is, the identical 7 bladed, you know, Galaxy fan, the wind machine. Yep, I first saw this fan right after we reconciled with my grandparents. And this fan, they had renovated their house, and that had sat in their upstairs. And at the time, in their upstairs was totally open area. And what they would do is have the, you know, the wind machine circulate, suck in the air through the window from the upstairs and blow it into, you know, the ceiling fans that were way high in their living room, and that was their source of ventilation for a while. And the thing is the wind machine that my grandparents had, you know, got extremely dirty, and my grandparents did not, you know, clean it. I don't know if they claim to have cleaned their other fans, but I don't know if they couldn't figure out how to take the wind machine, you know, apart to clean it. But it got, like, you know, extremely dirty, and the dirt on the blades was configured to where you could actually see the blade, some blade movement, and it gave an appearance like it was, like, you know, slowing down. And plus, it didn't seem to cool as well as it once did when I first, like, you know, saw it. But I was, like, you know, fascinated with that, you know, fan. And my grandparents, I mean, that was actually, you know, their go-to ventilation from the upstairs. And I would obsess about it all the time, and it stayed in my obsessions. But I think it was like 91 or 92 the fan gave out on them, and the motor burnt up, and they just used the one fan that they had left besides their ceiling fan, which was a Toastmaster box fan. And I think, you know, neglect of Galaxy, you know, 7-blader was the reason it, you know, failed. All right, that's a vintage, well, stand fan, 16-inch stand fan with, you know, well, that right there is a Galaxy. And somehow my grandparents acquired a fan like that, and I think the fan was stored away at my Uncle Frankie and Aunt Joyce's house up the road, and I think they bummed the fan from him or whatever. But the difference being is, instead of a brown blade set like, you know, this one has, the 16-inch, you know, fan my grandparents had a blue blade set. It may have been a Galaxy, it may have been a Tatung, some other, you know, brand, but, you know, a fan just like this one, except for it had a blue blade set. Same blades except for blue blade set. And I'm just wondering, why in the shit am I only finding, like, you know, these fans in the brown color? I'm not finding, you know, the fans with the blue blades, which is what my grandparents had. And that was one of their fans that I really didn't care for. Wasn't, you know, very appealing to me, so I'm not going to elaborate about too much. And now the Toastmaster, you know, box fan. My grandparents, you know, Toastmaster. You know, it had this, you know, same blade set. You see the kind of spiral shaped blades. This exact blade set, the difference being that, you know, the front grille, I believe, was actually, you know, may have been dark brown instead of white. And I think the cabinet was like, you know, a beige color. Was just like that one in a way. I mean, the front grille being plastic, the back grille being metal. Yeah, which was pretty typical of these, you know, Toastmasters. The story goes is my grandparents bought the Toastmaster like, well, shortly after, you know, their dog chewed the cord, and they're like, you know, red cabinet, you know, Lakewood, and to like have an additional fan until, you know, Papa could repair, you know, the Lakewood. And no, I mean, they used it in their bedroom window, and I think it was shortly after they bought, you know, the Toastmaster, our feud occurred. But at one point during the feud, we went to visit my Uncle Clifford, who at the time lived in Knoxville, Tennessee, and the Toastmaster, you know, box fan was right there in Uncle Clifford's apartment suite, right there by, you know, the sliding glass door. And I remember that so, like, you know, vividly. And shortly after we all, you know, reconciled, me, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, think, you know what, they took the Toastmaster, you know, back from Uncle Clifford and used the Toastmaster regularly in the downstairs, you know, bedroom. And but whenever the Galaxy wind machine quit working, they just, like, you know, use the Toastmaster like full time. And one night, you know, when I was spending the night at Mama and Papa's, I mean, Mama told me, you know, that, you know, she would bring that, that stand fan, which was, well, the Taytun Galaxy fan, whatever I showed earlier. And I'm like, no, I want the box fan. Because the Toastmaster was sure a hell of a lot more appealing to me than that, you know, pedestal fan. And they turned out like, you know, giving me both the fans. So I slept the night with both the Toastmaster and the pedestal fan, you know, blowing on me. So, I mean, it's just, I didn't tell my grandparents, but that was just my way of living on my obsessions with, like, you know, the Toastmaster. And my grandparents, you know, ended up using the Toastmaster, like, you know, full time in their upstairs bedroom. And they kept it going 24/7 at times, because that was the only fan that they were down with. All other fans, you know, went bad on them. And I'm wondering if the, you know, box fan my grandparents, you know, had was actually a Toastmaster, or like, you know, a mimic of a Toastmaster, because I'm finding, you know, Toastmaster box fans online all over the place. But the problem is I'm not finding a Toastmaster exactly of what my grandparents had, because theirs, you know, had a brown front plastic grill and like, you know, kind of a beige cabinet. And I mean, all other, fans are the exact same blade set, but just in the same thin box, but just not the same color grill or cabinet, and I don't know what's up with that. But my grandpa, sensed that the Toastmaster box fan was beginning to die, so they made another splurge. In the year 1991, Mama and Papa bought them a Lakewood box fan, just what as in the picture. We're using the Toastmaster and make the new Lakewood kind of like, part-time, and shortly thereafter, I no longer saw the Toastmaster, and they were using the Lakewood like, full-time, and I asked Papa what happened to the other box fan, and Papa told me, well, it died on us, and I hauled it off to the dump. But Paul would complain that, this Lakewood would often tip over on them, but when I spent the night at their house, I didn't have any, I did use the fan. I didn't have any problems with it tipping over. It may have came with the feet, and maybe they didn't attach the feet, but Mama complained about the fan tipping over on them, which I never, had it tip over whenever I used it. And that fan, they used it for many years as well. I mean, they did get central air heating and air conditioning in 1991 and continued to use the newer Lakewood, I at least part of the time. And then my Uncle Frankie took possession of that Lakewood back in, that Lakewood fan, I lasted for a fairly good while, because I'm gonna say back in year 2000, my Uncle Frankie and Aunt Joyce went camping in Indian Boundaries, and they had power sources nearby, and what they did in one of their tents was they put the Lakewood fan in the tent for their ventilation, and then Uncle Frankie and Aunt Joyce used a fan in their basement, I think, to exhaust the humidity that kept accumulating in their basement. And I'm going to say the fan lasted maybe 10 years and probably ended up dying whenever it may have gotten wore out by, exhausting the humidity in Uncle Frankie's basement. Yes, I was fascinated with, Mama and Papa's fans, and as the years went on and the fans started disappearing, I talked with Mama, and I was like, what's happening? And Mama, told me that they have problems with, the fans burning up after 2 to 5 years, something of that nature. But she would tell me, even their fans from the 1980s, my mama would complain to me that the motors would burn up in them, and that's kind of contradictory from the knowledge I found on YouTube of YouTubers that's saying that, the fans from the 80s last for eons and eons, a lot of the times, but my grandparents, had problems with a lot of them burning up on them, and, fans back then were better, and who knows, it could be, my grandparents were, good people, but they may not have been the best fan caretakers in the world, indeed. My mama told me that, whenever their Galaxy wind machine died on them, she would like to be able to go and buy another, wind machine, but they can't afford another, wind machine. And my best guess is it probably burnt out because it was so dirty and couldn't, breathe. And Grandma claimed to me that the Galaxy wind machine was one of the most powerful fans they ever owned, and plus Mama liked that it was kind of on a pivot stand to where they could angle it to blow on them, at their bedside during the night. And my mama, hated it when the wind machine burnt up and couldn't, buy another one. But too bad, none of, my grandparents' fans are still around that I could possibly have in my possession. They're probably, all long gone. Well, they are long gone, but the nostalgia lives on.